Thank you so much for joining our first episode of Miss Kick Webinars. We're really, really excited to announce our panel today. Zarah will be jumping on in 2 seconds, but really quickly, we have Emma from the BBC, we have Ellen from Manchester City, and we have Rebekah from Tottenham Hotspurs. So we will be doing quick introductions of who everyone is, the job roles. The girls will be talking all about their background, and then we will open up for questions in the end. So if everyone can stay on mute for the call whilst everyone's talking, and then at the end you can either drop a question in the chat box or we will put your hand up and we will pick you to ask a question face to face. So this episode is focusing on media. So this will be the great opportunity for you to get some real insight into different avenues within sports media from lots of different very influential ladies within the space. So hopefully you can feel really, really inspired. And like we say, if you've got any questions at the end, drop them in the chat box. I'm sure the girls would be more than happy to answer them. So we will nominate the first person to do an introduction. The girls are going to do short 7-minute intros about who they are, where they've come from, what they're doing now, and then we will go from there. So we'll start with Emma, if you're happy to start.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. So yeah, I work for BBC Sport. I'm a broadcast journalist, but I think a lot of people think that means I work on TV and radio, but I actually work online. I do a bit of TV and radio as well, but yeah, I am employed by the online team there. So I work on the football desk, so cover anything really in men's and women's football. So Premier League, WSL, international football, top flight European football. And then sort of the major tournaments, so things like Olympics, Commonwealth Games, all that kind of stuff. I used to do quite a bit of tennis. So I did a lot of sort of US Open, French Open, Wimbledon, Australian Open, a lot of night shifts, but yeah, pretty much all football now. So that is my role. Like I say, I do dip in and do a bit of radio and TV. So, I do a lot on TV for women's football. I'm on a BBC iPlayer show about once a week, which is called the Football News Show. I do a little bit on BBC Sports Day, which is on the news channel, and dip in here and there on other bits and bobs. And then in terms of radio, do a bit for 5 Live and World Service and the local radios around match days. In terms of getting there, I graduated from the University of Salford. I studied journalism, specialised in sports journalism in my final year. So I always knew what I wanted to do. I got sort of a broad range of experiences and skills during that course. While I was there, I did a lot of work placements. So I'm based up in Manchester, and that's where I work now at BBC. Obviously, Salford is in Manchester as well. So I've been here for, about 11 years now. It's gone really quickly. So I did a lot sort of around the local areas. So I worked for the Manchester Evening News, worked for Liverpool Echo, Liverpool Football Club. Went down to London and spent a few weeks with The Guardian, The Independent, Evening Standard, all on different occasions. And then I actually got a part-time job working for The Echo, where I used to cover sort of non-league football and cricket in Merseyside. So that was fun. Learned lots about the local areas in Merseyside. Sort of alongside that, kind of ran my own blog, did a lot of freelance work all around football. And then the opportunity came up to do a freelance shift at BBC, which was kind of what I was waiting for, really. I'd had a couple of job offers from elsewhere, which I turned down in the hope that BBC would eventually get me in. And then my first shift was a trial shift on the Champions League final. So yeah, I got thrown right in at the deep end. And then I came back about a week later and did another sort of shadow shift, and then started working freelance for a few months. So that was in the very late summer of 2017. Then I did a bit of work on social media. And like I said, did a bit of tennis work, worked on the news desk until eventually got myself onto the football desk, and was offered initially a 6-month contract in February 2018. And then within about 2 months of that contract, I'd been offered a permanent one. So yeah, I'm now coming towards the end of my 4th year, which has gone so quickly. It's been a bit of a whirlwind. So it's this year's a big year for me because I'm covering the Women's Euros this summer, and then I'll be going to Qatar for the Men's World Cup in the winter. Although I don't think that's yet been announced to my colleagues, but they're about to find out. Big exciting year for me, and lots to come really. But that's pretty much what I do. As I said at the beginning, I cover men's and women's football, mainly the Premier League. But yeah, I have a huge passion in the WSL and in the Women's Championship. So a lot of my spare time, I'd say, goes into covering that.
That was going to be the next question. Which do you prefer covering, men's or women's football?
They're both very different. So what I do, I specialise in sort of the live texting. So I do a lot of essentially kind of like online commentary. So around that, I do that on Premier League. So most weekends I'll be on kind of the main live text covering maybe 3 or 4 Premier League games at once. So it's really intense. And yeah, you get a real buzz from it and the adrenaline's insane. But in terms of WSL, I do a lot more kind of the match reports. So I actually go to a lot of the games, a lot of the tournaments. So it's very different. So I don't prefer one over the other.
No.
I'm just a bit greedy and just kind of want to do everything. So
like you say, they both offer you so many different things. So why not do both? Did you always want to go into the line of work that you're in then, growing up, or is it kind of a new thing?
Yeah, pretty much always. I knew I wanted to work in sport. I used to play hockey when I was younger, but I never really wanted to do it at a kind of a professional level. I just enjoyed doing it. So as soon as it got to an age where I kind of had to make that choice, I pretty much put all of my efforts into finding a job that involved sport. And yeah, I think sports journalism was the closest thing that I could find, because it meant that I could enjoy those moments, those real highs and lows that you get in sport. But instead of being on the pitch, you're essentially kind of getting involved in the people and portraying the emotions of those people who've been on the pitch. So yeah, I think I knew from quite a young age, probably about the age of 16, 17, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to actually study English at uni because I wanted to go and do a master's in journalism and get that experience alongside it. But the course at Salford was just perfect for me. So I wanted to be in Manchester and I wanted to be near the BBC studios. So it all worked out pretty well in the end.
Absolutely. And do you have any advice for anyone wanting to follow your footsteps in terms of journalism courses at unis? Because I know a lot of our wider community are looking to do that route.
Yeah, well, I think when I first started, the BBC studios had just moved up to Salford. So that was, like I say, that was a big reason as to why I wanted to do that course. But that was helped by the fact that I knew what company and what style of writing I wanted to go into. Whereas I think if you're perhaps a little bit more undecided, then I would just say go out and get as much experience as you possibly can. Because, even in today's day and age, it's all about transferable skills. And like I say, I work online and I do stuff for radio, I do stuff for TV. So make the most of any course that offers a variety of skills, and definitely, spend the time trying to learn them all. That is probably the one thing I regret, is I didn't spend enough time in broadcast because I was so kind of laser visioned on wanting to work online that I didn't really put as much time into sort of camera work and radio and voice training and things like that. And I'm sort of playing catch up a little bit now, but definitely get your own experiences alongside it too. That's the one thing I always say. Like my third year, I just spent pretty much all of my free time trying to get work placements, trying to shadow journalists, and just constantly keeping in touch with people. So that's always my number one rule, is make the most of the skills and like the learning that's on offer, but also go out there and be proactive yourself and get your own experience.
Amazing. That's some great advice. Perfect. Thank you very much, Emma. I know Zara's just joined us. So shall we move on to Ellen, if you're happy to give everyone a quick run through of you?
Yeah, of course. So thank you for joining us. So I'm Ellen Ellard. I am the stadium announcer for Man City Women, and I also go across the road and present for the men's team as well. I got into announcing in football pretty late into my career. I say pretty late, as in that wasn't the route I initially wanted to go down. I did a bit of athletics announcing just to get used to doing stadium stuff, and then ended up sort of falling into this job at Man City, which I'd never expected I'd get it. It's quite a funny story. I was sat around during I think it was probably the second lockdown back in 2020, just strolling through LinkedIn on like a Friday evening. I think, everyone was supposed to be out. You'd expect a standard 21-year-old to be out and about. I was just sat there on the floor in my flat, drinking a glass of wine, watching the telly with my housemate, and this LinkedIn notification popped up, and it was for this job at Man City. And I read it and I was like, that is my absolute dream job. I've been involved in women's football and watched women's football and played when I was younger, and just wanted to get back into it because of the way I went into radio sort of drew me away from it a bit, just because the lack of opportunities in local radio. So yeah, this job came up, and then 6 months later, after quite a lengthy application process, found out that I was the one who got it, and then moved up to Manchester, which was a bit of a crazy experience. I'm from Peterborough originally, so very much like small town. Moved to Cambridge to start working for the BBC before I moved up here to Manchester. So that's how I ended up at Man City. But before that, I knew I didn't want to go to uni. I knew that I wanted to go into radio and go into broadcasting. So I started out just doing community radio when I was like 14. I was really lucky. Like, my mum's chiropractor used to present just a music show on our local radio station and had me down to shadow her. And then I just sort of ended up doing a bit more shadowing, and then picked up my own show, and then did a couple of different local radio stations, and then ended up, when I was probably just before I was 18, getting some work experience at our local BBC station, BBC Radio Cambridgeshire, which had an office in Peterborough. So I ended up going after school, working there, then managed to fit it in around my A-levels when I was 18. So when I then got to that opportunity of whether I wanted to go to that decision of whether I wanted to go to uni or whether I wanted to go straight into work, it was sort of fairly easy for me, just because I'd already had that door opened. I'd already been working through my A-levels. I did have an offer at Salford University. So like Emma, that was the one that stood out to me because I'd already worked for the BBC. I knew that was the area I wanted to be in. I knew that was the style I wanted to go into. So I had an offer up there, decided to turn it down and sort of go very much my own way. It was a bit of a tricky decision at the time because my school weren't really prepared for anyone not to go to uni. It was very much, you just went to uni, no one did apprenticeships or whatever. So I had some interesting talks with various career people. The career advisor at school didn't really know how to handle me or really understood what I wanted to do. But thankfully, I just sort of stuck to my guns and was able to, do what I knew, which was wanting to go into radio. And I had that experience. And so even, to be fair, some of my family were a bit confused on why I wasn't going. I had fairly decent grades. I had grades that would have got me into pretty much any uni I would have wanted to go to, but still made that choice of going into radio and getting that sort of real life experience straight away, which, when I look back at it now, was definitely the best decision, because my friends graduated last year, my friends who I was in the same school year as, and they missed out on a huge amount of their uni experience because of COVID. Whereas I was there in the real world doing the job. My job didn't close down during COVID. We were seen as essential workers at local radio. I was just doing production stuff, a bit of broadcast assistant stuff, the odd bit of reporting here and there. And so I was lucky on that front. But like I said, the opportunities in sport just weren't there for a young woman in local radio. It's very, very tricky. They're very set in their ways. It was great for me. Like, I loved the experience I had there. There's no doubt that they were very much like, this is how we do it. The commentary setup, the teams have been there for years. So finding that break was really hard. But then when I saw it, it came in a bit of an unconventional way through LinkedIn. When you look at presenting jobs, and very rarely do these jobs actually come up and you can apply for them. It's usually like auditions and you don't know who's getting them or how to get into that. So I was really lucky that I had that as a bit of a break. And yeah, that's how I've ended up here in Manchester.
Amazing. And similar question to what I asked Emma. Did you always want to go into the line of work that you're in now? And what advice would you have for anyone? Because obviously you've started very young in radio. What advice would you give to someone who is really young to help build their confidence to take the opportunities like you did when you see the LinkedIn ads?
Yeah, I the only other thing I wanted to do as a career was be a pole vaulter, and that dream ended really, really early when I broke my collarbone when I was 11. So yeah, I've always been involved in sport, like, similar story to Emma. I played football when I was younger. Sadly, the opportunities weren't there when I got to secondary school, so I went into more athletics and those kind of individual sports, cycling, swimming, triathlon, all that kind of thing. And I found this is a really great opportunity, like Emma said. If you're not going to become an elite sports person, but you still want to reclaim and have that sort of connection with the sport, this is brilliant and perfect for me. I always knew I just think it was like long car journeys, maybe just sitting there, always having the radio on. I was a radio geek when I was growing up. Like, I used to set my alarm to different radio shows. I'd always wake up and listen to Chris Moore's at like 6:30 every morning. I was heartbroken when he left Radio 1. So I think I always knew that was the route I wanted to go in. I mean, at 14, starting on community radio, I think that's sort of evidence enough that I was like dead set on that. But that's not always the way. Like, I've always known, but a lot of my friends at school, when we were having to make career decisions, they didn't really know. And I think I've always been quite lucky that I've been so dead set on that. And actually, it's opened different doors. I never would have seen myself I did a bit of presenting at Wembley for the FA Cup final for the women. I would never have imagined when I was back at school standing there in front of Wembley saying, "Welcome to Wembley, Man City fans, here's your starting 11." But it's happened. So even though radio was my first love, it's opened so many other doors. So I'd say just sort of stick to, go try everything really, because even like go with what your heart says. If you're saying, want to go into radio, or like Emma, you want to go into print, doors will open elsewhere as well. If you can prove that you're sort of good enough journalist and you've got that experience elsewhere, those doors open as well. So I'd say just give everything a try. Like, don't feel like you have to stay in one lane, because the doors will open elsewhere as well.
That's amazing advice. I totally agree. I think, like you say, if you're dedicated and you just work hard and you take every opportunity that comes to you, then it'll work itself out. Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you so much, Ellen. Shall we move on to Rebekah? If you're good to go.
Yes. Hey, everyone. I'm Rebekah. I am a presenter and broadcaster. I work full-time for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, and then also like freelance on the side, doing other broadcast bits with different broadcasters. I guess similar to Ellen, I actually started out in radio, but even before radio I worked in Sainsbury's whilst I was at uni. And I just want to shout out Sainsbury's, because I know obviously often we're like, we start in these industries that we want to be in, but like Sainsbury's really gave me like a really good foundation in terms of like how to speak and to communicate with people, just purely because of customer service. Plus it was fun being 17 and you're like, it's just, I'm earning a bit of money and working in Sainsbury's. But I do give it a lot of credit to actually part of the journey of how I've come into becoming a broadcaster, a presenter. Just don't if you're not necessarily in the place that you want to be, don't disregard what you're doing right now, because actually everything requires communication, whether that's written, whether that's speaking, listening. So don't discredit it just because, you might not be where you want to be at the moment. Went to uni, studied English language and linguistics. Like I said, I've always enjoyed talking, very much similar to Emma and Ellen. Played football all the way up until uni, and then now I just kind of play a bit of like five-a-side football. Played up until uni. It was actually a couple of months ago I found a little poem I wrote when I was about like 8 years old, and it was about how I wanted to own a football stadium, and like how it was like my special place, and I had all this. I'll have to show it to you one time, but yeah, just this picture of me. I swear I drew of a football stadium, and this was at my special place. And I'm sure like Ellen and Emma, always I thought I was going to be the first woman playing in the Premier League. That was just what it was at 9 years old. You're thinking, I'm going to make it. And obviously I didn't make it as a professional footballer, but what is quite funny now is working for Tottenham is that sometimes my job actually requires me to like kick a ball, which is like insane. I've only been at Spurs for about 1 year and 3 months, but as I was saying, I was working in radio, and again, radio, just working in voiceovers, doing presenting, did a bit of a football podcast. And so I was working for Kiss FM, which was great. Really enjoyed that. But football has always been my first love. Like sport has always been my first love. Similar to Ellen, also did a lot of athletics and swimming, but football through, men's, women's game. Like I said, I thought I was gonna make it, But so to come to this, to now work for Spurs, obviously, like I said, this last year has been absolutely amazing. I think in terms of how I got there, as I said, when I was working in radio, I was doing a lot of like football content and just doing bits and bobs around the radio station. And my job actually full time didn't actually require me to do lots of speaking. It was more doing like production management. But again, the skill of being able to communicate. So Emma does lots of online stuff, still having to do lots of like social media, lots of written pieces. And then obviously on the side, I was doing my voiceovers and doing a show and then doing the football podcast. And then that was, I think, maybe towards my time at KISS, I was very much like, I actually want to transition into the football industry or into the sport industry full time. And so I was like, well, how am I going to get there? And one of the things that I like to remind myself of, and I want to remind you guys of, is like, use what's in your hands. So, and what I mean by that is just, I started making like my own football content that I just was like with some of my friends and people who played sport or people who just really like fanatics. And just started making my own content, which was amazing. And then obviously the lockdown came, and then you had to like switch things up slightly. So like everybody, I did a podcast, but it was good because it was just like continuing that skill set. And so I was doing a podcast because we couldn't do any filming anymore. And then so there was a role at Spurs, so similar to what Ellen was saying actually on LinkedIn. When she saw the City role, there's a role at Spurs, but it had nothing to do with what I'm doing right now. It was like social media, and like obviously I love to scroll like everybody else does, right? Like on Instagram, Twitter, or whatever. But I was like, I don't really, like, social media isn't really what I want to do. But I was like, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, this is the team that I supported since I came out of the womb. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what an opportunity. So I went and applied for that role, and I didn't get it. But there's a guy I used to work with at KISS who's an engineer. And I just dropped him a message just really randomly, because I forgot that he worked at Spurs. He left the radio station, went to Spurs to be an engineer. And I just dropped him a message on LinkedIn, and I was just like, oh yeah, so I saw this role. Like, I just want to know, like, what's the culture like working at Spurs? And obviously I'm a big Spurs fan, so I also don't want it to be ruined if I go and work there, And he was like, oh, Rebekah, I was like, good to hear from you, blah, 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 whatever. And he goes, there's actually a role coming up that I actually think you'd be really good for. And I was like, oh, what's this role? He said, well, the club's never done anything like this before. And it's actually to do like live commentary, like on Twitch. And I think if you don't know what Twitch is, I'm going to assume most people know what Twitch is, but Twitch is basically a gaming platform, and it's all about, playing games, and you obviously watch people live doing that. So Twitch like approached some football clubs to do some like live commentary on and to just do some content on Twitch, switch it up, because they're trying to broaden their horizons on sport. And so Spurs and a couple of other clubs were like the first to like go on Twitch. So he was like, yeah, this job's coming up, I think you'd be brilliant for it. He was like, I've seen your content. I was like, what do you mean you've seen my content? He was like, yeah, Josh, this guy, he sent it to you. And I was like, oh, okay. So then he just sent it forward. He said he'd already sent some of the stuff that I'd done, some of the content I'd filmed and my podcast on. So before I'd even got into the door, by the actual kindness of two people, the club were already aware of what I'd done. So by the time I met with the head of Spurs TV, they were just like, tell us a bit about yourself. And I was like, yeah, I'm Rebekah, big Spurs fan. I feel like I really like killed it, because I showed them a picture of when I was like 4 years old in a Spurs kit. And I was just like, if they're not going to love that, then I don't know what they're going to love. But so that was like my first thing that I showed them. They're like, oh, we love it. And I was like, yeah. And then they asked me to come in for a screen test. They're like, can you like do some commentary on the game? I was like, yeah, absolutely. And then literally a couple of days later, they're like, we'd love to give you the job. And I think for me personally, when I reflect on like, why do I think I got there, I was just like, I think sometimes we can disregard some of the things, our best attributes, because we don't always fit the bill of what things look like or how people sound. I think obviously doubt can creep in very quickly, but I just want to encourage you to find people who actually speak truth over you, because when you've got a gift, whether it's writing, speaking, announcing, whatever it is that you want to do in media, find yourselves people who are going to like give you the truth about what you do well, and so once I went in, I was really just encouraged to work with my co-host, Matt, who's honestly amazing. He's such a great guy. Obviously, he looks like a normal guy in football, white guy in football, and he just what we will expect, right? And so to work alongside him and just to feel quite like good allyship with him has been amazing. And then the year at Spurs has just been, I don't know, it's just been amazing. Like, it's been amazing working with the men's team, the women's team, and going into the new season, we'll be doing some more stuff with the academy. I think we just started out on Twitch, which was great, and we're doing commentary on every game, every competition. Obviously, we're back in the Champions League, so next season, I don't know, it's going to be carnage. It's going to be so great. But what has been fantastic is that we've actually had a real natural progression from just like being on Twitch, and now we do a lot of presenting and broadcasting on lots of different platforms within the club. And that has been really fantastic to see, where they've seen the richness of having people who are fans talking about football on actual club channels, which, and just FYI, whilst it's football, it's also a business. So sometimes people can get very like cagey about things that are being said, but we've had a lot of freedom, which has been really good, which I think is kind of rare. So we don't take that for granted. It's just been amazing to just see like our progression from like, starting. I've never done commentary on football before. I've spoken lots about football, but not commentated on literally what's going on in the game. and then now just kind of being brought into the women's I guess content and working with the women's team, which is obviously amazing. If you don't know the story of Spurs women, they are kind of like have more recent history in the WSL, kind of just more newly promoted. So seeing like the transition for Spurs women has been amazing, and to be part of this journey as well has been incredible. Like just working with them, and we did some pre-season training with them. Do not underestimate what these footballers have to go through during pre-season. It is absolutely crazy. You know, we all just think, oh yeah, you know, we kicked a ball once in a while, but when you actually have to do this professionally and you get paid for it, yeah, it requires some serious work, which I'm sure some of you, if you're playing, you know about. And yeah, it's just been like, as I said, been amazing to just like speak on this subject and bring people in. I think the great thing about my job on Twitch at the moment is how we've been able to bring like the younger generation in and interact with them more. And obviously lots of them are really talented doing video editing, presenting, all sorts of things. And so Twitch has been a really great creative avenue for young Spurs fans to kind of come in and get a bit more involved. And I guess, yeah, just lastly, with my role at Spurs, we do so much. It's not just the commentary, as we said. We're doing all sorts of things on all social platforms, and it's been really enjoyable. I like that because of the generation that we are, which is much younger, there's more room to be less kind of rigid in how we've always seen like social commentary written or spoken. And so, you know, I don't necessarily speak like how everybody else speaks, but that's a good thing. And I'm kind of enjoying seeing lots of different kinds of people putting their own spin on football, chatting about football, because actually when you're with your mates, right, you're just flowing, and then all of a sudden a camera or, you know, your name is written on a bio, you can feel like you need to sit in a certain box. And that's not to say that, you know, I think boxes are a bad thing, because that's not what I'm saying at all, but I just think it's nice when you have room to kind of express yourself really well when talking about sport, well, obviously football in particularly, and yeah, so that's kind of been my short whistle stop journey into football and the media.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rebekah. You must be so excited for next season.
I'm absolutely buzzing.
Yeah.
Honestly, like it just, the mood in the club is actually crazy how much everyone is just like, it's like we've won the lottery. I'm just like, This is ridiculous, guys, we just made it to top 4. The hard work starts next season, but yeah, it's been good.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Brill, we will move on to Zarah then, if you're good to go.
Yeah, I'm all good to go. Better late than never from me. Just trying to run around trying to find a place here at work. But yeah, so a bit about me then with my background, how I got into sports media. So I literally growing up didn't have a single absolute donkeys about actually what I wanted to do. I was always one of them that was, funnily enough, I actually, when I was a kid, wouldn't speak to anyone apart from my mum. I had absolute kind of mute syndrome where I would just panic if anyone said hi to me, and I just basically have to tug on my mum. And then she ended up putting me in stage school at the age of 5 because one of her friends just said, oh, go and stick her in stage school or whatever, and she'll start talking. Lo and behold, I didn't shut up ever since 5 years old. So I ended up kept doing that, and it ended up that since then I kind of just realized that I loved it, because I realized that I naturally just had a way of speaking to people and being a good listener as well, and wanting to make sure I heard lots of stories, because that was the thing that made me tick. And it's one thing that I kind of didn't kind of clock as I was growing up. In school, I never really was that keen. I'd have a kick around and stuff football wise, but in my school, there wasn't like a women's football team, nothing like that. You literally have to kick around with the lads. And it was never something that was made openly available. So then it's ended up that as college was going on, figuring out what to do, I ended up even doing like 3 years at college rather than the 2, because I kept changing my mind. I was like, oh, I'm going to do IT. I'm going to do video game design because I loved my gaming. And then it ended up I had an absolute panic because I decided to do computer networking at Salford Uni, because I realised Salford Uni, it's all right. People that sound like me, I'll be safe and sound. And it ended up that on my first week, got into the computer networks course, and I was looking around, I was like, this is a massive lecture hall, I have no clue what I'm doing here. And it ended up that no one was speaking to me either, and I was like, this is a bit weird. And it was just all lads that were in there. I didn't mind that. Like, I mean, to be fair, my entire like personal friend group are mainly all lads as well, because we just chat about rubbish and football and all sorts. And the lecturer took me out there and said, I'm really sorry, but has no one told you? And I said, like, told me what? And he said, well, it's been made to be an international course because we didn't have enough enough like English speaking people on the course, so you're going to have to think of something quick because it's all group projects here, so they won't be able to listen to you. So I was like, right, so I've really got some thought process to do now. And then I ended up going back through all like my English coursework at college and realised that I was writing Formula One sports commentaries, stuff on sports, doing all this lot. And then it just twigged, and there was a journalism course at Salford Uni. And I realised it was full because I couldn't even get through it on clearing. And then it ended up that I basically phoned, there was an amazing lecturer called Zarah at Salford Uni. I managed to get a detail, and I phoned her in absolute tears and begged her to put me on the course. And she went, what can you offer? And I said, I've done an F1 commentary back in my first year of college. I can't offer anything else, but I make a good brew, and I know I'll try really hard for you. So then I think she felt really sorry for me, and she put me on the course. And literally from the first 5 minutes there, I realised that broadcast journalism is probably what I wanted to do. Still didn't have a clue about presenting, but Salford Uni is really cool because they have like a studio in the campus at Media City and everything. It's right near BBC, so you get this natural buzz about it, and you feel like you're somewhere special. And it ended up on the first week, they took me into the studio and they were just showing me around, and I was like, oh, well, just run through like some art cues and stuff like that. I'd never done a single thing. And I started doing it. I thought, oh, this is quite cool. And they said, oh, do another one. And one of the lecturers called Andrew, he basically brought me in and made me do it. Like after the lecture, he said, do you mind just coming in? Just want to keep doing it. And he was like, you actually have a bit of a knack to this. So do you mind like coming in once a week to doing it? And I was like, yeah, I will. And to be fair, if it wasn't for them having so much faith into me, I don't think I would have actually pursued it, because they're the one that really steered me to do it. I also panicked a bit too, because for instance, I ended up being diagnosed with dyslexia when I was 17. So I remember I always got told that I struggle like when it's reading, because I realised that I can only really deal with stuff and like I highlight stuff. I have my own little colour code, little technique to make sure I do stuff right. And I kind of thought, well, are you sure this is what I'm going to do? Because auto cues might be trouble, there might be this, there might be all different things. And I realised there might be a certain way I can type. Cue and stuff. Realised I didn't need auto cue. So then I realised that exams really weren't my forte. I was very much practical learning, got to get my head into the gear. And in my first year of uni, I snuck my application on a third year placement because I seen the pile of papers. So I decided, I'm just going to sneak it in there because it was a placement at United for a season. And if you can't tell, I'm a massive red. I've got red streaks in my hair. I mean, I'm pretty much addicted to the place and always have been, which is a bit strange because my mum never let me watch football because my uncle's a crazy United fan. And mum always said to me, I should never have football. Football was banned from the house. Well, sorry, mum, but it completely backfired. So I ended up somehow getting this United placement. And then everyone was like, what? She's a first year. Like, it's meant to be third years only. And then they kind of realised that at United that like, oh, I'm actually really keen, so they'll give me a chance. And it was me and three other lads. And we basically were in charge of like the United app, because before the United app was launched here in the UK, it was over in Asia first. So we'd have to do like picture commentary of the games and stuff for all the international fans to follow. So I started doing that. And it was amazing. But as I was doing it, I ended up learning Spanish on the side. When I was in like college and stuff, so I can speak Spanish. I used to be fluent, not anymore, because I need to get away from Salford voices first and get into more Spanish mode. But then I ended up starting to get some people online message me and stuff, and I was chatting more. I was doing like some segments about being a United fan. I ended up doing a piece for there was this for being sports in Mexico. They realised that I could speak Spanish, and they just wanted me to do some pieces outside Old Trafford, so I did that too. Really random, just filming on my phone, because you've just got to do what you do to try and fake it to make it. And it ended up working out. The only downside was that I ended up, there was an amazing moment at United where I got told I could present this show. I made this show with two amazing producers, because I was very much a big believer in like fans are the whole focus of football. Without fans, you wouldn't have it. They encourage people to play football, the passion's there, and that's what it's all about. So I wanted to do a whole thing where fans had their own little segment every single match day. And it worked. It ended up on like the first time we did it, it got 1 million views on Facebook, 900,000 views on Twitter, and it just blown up, and it was amazing. And then United offered me a job. However, at the time, media wasn't really the priority at United at that point because things were going well on the pitch. So then it ended up that they didn't really have an offer. They had like a very much tight-knit presenter contract, which you didn't have a lead on creative. You didn't have any kind of like say on doing other jobs. Like, so because of that, I was a bit conflicted, because I realised that I couldn't afford like having a good like living wage just doing that. And then it ended up that whilst I was thinking about what to do, whether to take a job or just carry on doing stuff for free. I ended up getting a phone call from Sky Sports saying they needed me. They see me chatting rubbish about United online. They needed me to start chatting rubbish on the telly. So because of that, they said, can you get your book to Anfield? Which, first of all, I wasn't really that keen on. So I needed to get myself to Anfield because it was Liverpool versus United. It was Friday. It was like Friday night preview before the Saturday. He said, get there. It's going to be United versus Liverpool fans. So I said, all right. I'd really love to take the mick out of some Liverpool fans at Anfield. So I'll give it a go. And I turned up, and it ended up that it wasn't just me and a couple of us United fans versus Liverpool fans. It was me with Gary Neville on my team, and then with Jamie Carragher on their team. So we ended up going on, chatting rubbish. I said something about Brendan Rodgers basically kicking off about how, like, well, Jurgen Klopp's on the same amount of points that Brendan Rodgers got sacked. So you can't, going on about him all the time. And then Jamie Carragher actually shut up. Gary Neville started laughing, said that it was great. And then it got a lot of views. And then afterwards, Gary basically got all my details. I didn't know what for. I just thought he was just going to want to chat to me about taking the mick out of Carragher, and how I did it, because it's all what he seems to do. And instead, a couple of days later, he had a meeting with me at Hotel Football. It was like 8 a.m. Got me breakfast and everything with a contract. And he said, I want you to join Salford City Football Club. I think you've got a lot of bit of charisma about you. I want you to lead on creative content at Salford because you're a little bit kooky and I like that. And I think it can work. And it ended up that I realised that as much as I loved United at the time, I realised I was wearing my heart on my sleeve because I had so much love for the club. And in some ways I needed to have a bit of trust in myself because I had been working hard. And I realised that I wanted to learn my craft and really show off what I could do. And Salford was amazing for that. Salford, I was there full time for 4.5 years, helped out voluntary beforehand, so knew some bits that I could do, and it was amazing. I made my own match day show. There was so many tech stuff. I was pulling pranks on players, jumping in bloody roofs of cars, doing everything. They just trusted me to do it. Done some presenting at Wembley, which I'll never forget. And I ended up getting quite seriously ill when I was at Salford. And they literally, the players and everything, visited me in the hospital. They were like, you're part of the team. So they even put me on the injury list. And it was something that I hold so close to my heart, because without them, I remember in the hospital, they said to me, you can't run around pitches anymore. You can't do this. You can't do that. And they literally put me under their physio team and stuff like the players did. So, and getting me back to full fitness. So without them, wouldn't be there now. And it ended up last year. So I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was trying to think about, after COVID and everything, getting all fans. I was thinking of some massive plans for Salford for the new season. And then United phoned me and they said to me, we've seen what you've been doing and we really want you to bring you back home to United. We've got this amazing role of assistant producer and presenter. You'll get to do your kooky things all here and everything. And we've got a lot of trust in you. You've learnt your craft. You've done what you said you wanted to do. And I remember I'm like a puppy, a bit loyal to my owner, right? So I needed to make sure that what Salford thoughts were before I even accepted it. So I even said, United, I said, I'm really sorry, I can't answer it yet. I need to go and check. So I felt really weird about that. I actually did that. And I checked with Salford, and to put it bluntly, I got called a word. I got told to stop being a D, and that it was a great opportunity, and I should go and do it. And that's what I did. And I said, right, I'm only doing it. And I spoke to United. Said I'm only doing it because I still get to run Salford women's team. Because on a random note, whilst at Salford, because I was one of the only females there. I ended up, when we formed our women's team back in 2018, they said, we need someone to run it. So someone picks a manager and everything, gets the players and sort it out. And because I had the passion for Salford, they trusted me to do it. And I've been doing it ever since. I didn't do too bad on the treble in the first season. So, I'll take that with me. So I've been doing all right. But ever since United, it's been great. I've been across, like what Rebekah said, first team, women's team, academy. They have a lot of trust. And it's one of them that I've done a lot of work with, BBC Sport 2, BBC Radio Manchester, beforehand, but it was one of them that I feel like Rebekah was saying about, your voice sometimes might sound a bit different, but it's one of them that I like the fact now. I never used to like the fact that I'm a bit Salford. I'm a little bit rough. I'm a little bit I'll do my interviews if I'm chatting to a mate in a pub. But it works because I want people to feel like I'm the mate. Anyone that's watching any video I'm presenting, I want you to feel like that. I'm welcoming you into my gaff for the day. This is how it's meant to be. And it's something that I'm really proud of now. I've got so many targets and stuff that I want to do in the future, but it's one of them that here at the minute, I'm enjoying every single second. And there's so many trips. I got trusted to go to Bangkok to launch the pre-season tour this season, which was insane. I got a couple of days notice that I got told, oh, you're going to Atletico Madrid, and we're not going to give you a brief, we just want to see what you can do. So I had sheer panic on the plane, but then I managed to run around like interviewing fans with beers in their hands and everything, and it was just one of them that I want to kind of be that person that's someone that's a bit relatable rather than someone that's in a suit and tie. And I think that's kind of the vibe that I want to go for, because like I said, fans are really important to me, and that's kind of a bit of a version of my story.
That's amazing. I think one of the main things to take from listening to all four of you is everyone's had such different routes and such different stories, but I think the main consensus is be yourself and just take every opportunity that comes at you, and you never know where you're going to end up. Amazing. So we've got a few people in the chats. Thank you again, ladies, for sharing all your stories. I've got a few questions to ask as well. A couple of people have sent some in who are going to be watching on YouTube after this. But if anyone has any questions, just drop it in the chat box and I will ask it. We'll just do about 5 minutes worth of questions, and then I will let you go back to your busy days. But the first question is from Lola. So Lola is a member of our community. So Lola has been interested in a career in media, women's football in particular, for quite a while. She's done a few interviews with footballers, one including Des Kelly from BBC Sports, from the journalism side, and she just basically wants to get as much advice as she can to how to gain more experience and more confidence. I know you all touched on them in your descriptions, but have you got any key pieces of advice, mainly for confidence building, that you could all give from your experience? Whoever wants to go first can go first.
So kind of like I really related to what Zara was saying, because like when I was at school, I had I always knew I wanted to go into radio, but I didn't really see myself being in front of the mic. I always thought I'd be behind the scenes doing production stuff. And it was only when I decided in like year 8, I was like, I'm going to be house captain. And there was nothing that was going to stop me being house captain. So I was like sporty, but I knew I didn't have like the music, or I had a little bit of the academic side, but like that wasn't like my main thing. My main thing was sports. So I was like, right, I need to make sure that I am like standing out to the teachers and all that kind of thing, and everyone who makes the decisions. So I had an awful fear of public speaking. Like I've got paper here, like I would be there like the front of the assembly like shaking, and like my papers would be like all over the place, but I'd have to go like I knew that I had to stand up and like keep doing it and keep like doing the assemblies and reading in the cathedral and stuff like that, just to like get over that. And so it's a bit mad that now I'll do that at the Etihad and don't think twice about it. It's just like, there's the mic, off you go. So just like get as much practice, much of experience. Obviously if you're already creating your own content, that's great. There's so many opportunities now, like kind of touch on what Rebecca was saying, there's so many platforms through lockdown as well, creating podcasts, TikTok. Look at how crazy TikTok is going. Like it's so easy to make your own content. So just keep doing that, keep putting it out there, asking people for advice. That's probably one of the harder things to do. Just like send it to people. I know so many people who will say like inboxes are always open for advice, give a bit of feedback. It's hard to ask for it, but it really, really helps in the long term.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say like my biggest thing is never say no. And that's something that I sort of live by, especially as someone who works online. Like, yeah, I do try and do a lot of broadcast stuff because for like my long-term ambitions, I want to be able to kind of do a bit of everything. And I absolutely hate it. Like I hate it in the moment. I'm so nervous in front of camera. I don't like speaking on radio. But I feel so great afterwards because it's like, oh, I've done something that's really pushed like me out of my comfort zone. And like the more and more I do it, obviously, it gets a little bit easier. But yeah, big thing for mine is just never say no. I was in Belfast recently covering the England Northern Ireland Women's World Cup qualifier. And there was sort of, the Northern Ireland manager came out and said some controversial stuff in his post-match press conference. And I remember flagging that to like my kind of the TV producer, the radio producer, and obviously my editor online at like 11:30 at night. And then, before I know it, I woke up the next morning to a phone call from like 2 of the big bosses at like 7:30 in the morning being like, we're going to change your flight. We want you to stay in Belfast for the day. Like, can you do this? Can you do that? And it was like doing stuff that I'd never done before across every single platform because I was the only journalist still out in Belfast. Everyone else had flew back at like 4:00 in the morning. So I was like packaging like stuff for like Radio 4, which I'd never done before. Obviously going on 5 Live, I was doing hits on like several TV things. And it was just one of those moments where I quite easily could have said like no, but instead I just made it clear. I was like, look, I've never done this before. I need you to help me. I need you to tell me what to do. And I basically just, I wasn't really afraid to ask for help, I think is kind of the main thing, like what Ellen says, like always ask people for advice. And I had a young producer out there with me, and I basically just said, look, like, I can't do this by myself. Can you help me? Can you do it with me? And she was like, absolutely. So we sort of discussed what we were going to do, and then called back the producers, and we were like, we've got this. And just sort of, went with the flow, and it was great. Like what I got out of that was brilliant. And we sort of, showed what we could do to all the producers. And then since then, they've all come back to me and asked me to do other stuff. So absolutely, just never say no, just say yes and give it a go and fake it until you make it.
And just to add to that, I would say if Lola, if you're not feeling like it, because it can be a lot to try and like push doors, like with big broadcasters, we've all said like Manchester, Salford, BBC, Spurs. I feel like a good first step is also just to collaborate with people around you. So like collaborate with people who are like similar minded or like minded. So whether it's the person who has the camera, or the person who's good at the sound, or the person who's great at writing, like whatever it is, like collaborate with people. And so you don't feel like it's like a solo mission that you have to go and then it feels really lonely and it feels really tiresome. Find people who are also similar or interested in similar things to you. And if you can't find people, I guess, like locally, the great thing is we have the internet. So, and as Ellen said, like TikTok, you can just find many communities, obviously safely, but lots of communities I think you can just collaborate with. And just never be afraid to just drop somebody a message if you like what they're doing, and be like, oh, can I shadow you? Can you? And as Ellen said, people's inboxes are open. So I would think about collaboration as a good first step as well.
Just to jump in on this one as well, is that I'd say, agreeing with absolutely everyone's points there. I mean, in my first year of uni, I literally was so concerned about like doing work stuff. I wouldn't say this many, I ended up doing 10 work placements at the same time. So I basically would like, I remember I'd done one in BBC Sport as well. So they had like on the 5th floor where they have like a bit of a lounge area. I'd basically go and have a kip there. And then I'd go and do a night shift elsewhere for a shift. And I just basically went around. I'm like, oh, I'm in uni now. So I ended up just doing that for a bit. But I made so many contacts. And contacts is like a massive thing. Like there's so many things that you can build from it. I remember just one time, so there's Dockyard in Media City. I ended up just going there just for a cheeky little pint or whatever after uni. Ended up hearing that all the BBC lot were in there. There's usually, as a side note, if you ever want some contacts or whatever, some cracking stories, there's always the Corrie lot, the BBC lot, everything. They're always in Dockyard, they are. And
I'm always in Dockyard.
See what I mean? We're all there. But it ended up, there was one day that I was in there and I heard this producer going on being like, oh no, we don't know what we're going to do. We didn't put a red, so everyone's took their holidays. They're all away from the summer. And it was Rio Olympics that year. And I was like, oh, there's some gaps in. I was like, hi, I'm Zarah, nice to meet you. Had no clue what I was even putting my head in for at this stage. And then I knew that one of my lecturers worked for them as well. So then next day in uni, like lecturer was like, were you chatting to someone in the pub last night? And I was just like, I was chatting to everyone. Like, it's the only way to gain some contacts. And ended up through that, I actually got a 2-hour trial shift with them. And he said, if I got the 2-hour trial shift right, then I'd get to do all the night shifts for the BBC Sport Live team for Rio Olympics. And it ended up, there was literally me and a couple of others from Salford Uni, because we went and had a pint in Dockyard that actually got the jobs. So it's one of them, literally, it's coincidence, it's contacts, but put yourself out there. And Twitter as well, make sure that you know your worth. Know that your opinions are absolutely valid. If you've done some research into something, if you've got a niche, absolutely go for it. Like, although I do football, I absolutely love F1. Like, I'm obsessed with it. So I'll always try and make sure that like I tweet about it too, so people know that I do actually know my stuff that I'm talking about. And it's something, just be really proud of every single thing that you do. And if you've got a cracking story, that you've got a cracking interview, put it to 5 Live or someone like that. They'll definitely pick up on it. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That is great advice. I think the final question we will end on today, it's a bit of a hard question. If you could all go back to your 16-year-old self when you were trying to figure out the best way of getting into this, what piece of advice, knowing what you know now, would you give yourself?
I think I already touched on mine, but it's absolutely like my biggest regret is because I was like, oh, I want to work for online. I didn't show up for like any of my TV lectures at uni. Like I was like, I'm not interested in the slightest. I think I went to one to work out how to use a camera so that I could actually hand in my assignment. And as long as I passed, I was like, I'm done, because I knew for like the next 2 years I wasn't going to use it. But I just kind of wish that I'd like gone to those lectures and learned those skills, because even if you don't want to go into that specific part of media, I just think all those transferable skills are so important. And actually I'm finding myself now like kind of getting in touch with people from the BBC and asking, can I have training in this? Can I have training in that? And probably at least half of it was definitely available to me at uni. So I wish I'd like taken notice and just like learned more when I could. So absolutely, that would be my biggest advice, is just go out there and do all the courses that's available while it's free, and make the most of it.
Amazing, thank you. Who wants to go?
For me, I would say don't get so bogged down on like the subject you think you need to like focus on, because you get to life and you realize, you know what, as Emma's just said, everything is quite transferable. And so I think I wouldn't have stressed maybe so much about I need to study this specific thing in order to get into this specific route, because it didn't even take me necessarily like where I thought it was going to go when I graduated uni, and that's fine. I think that's probably one thing that's always quite hard. I think especially if you're doing your GCSEs going into your A levels, or if you're going into work after your GCSEs. Obviously there's this real culture in our society about like, know what you need to do, and like there's a pressure, and you know, it might not be that helpful me saying don't feel pressure, because it's very easy to say and it's not easy to do. But I would just say don't pressurize yourself. You're like 16, I was like 10 years time you'll be 26, and then you'll still be like, oh, actually there's other things I want to do. So just don't as much as you possibly can. I'm sure you've got teachers, lecturers, parents, guardians, whoever saying like don't be so pressured, like listen to that, because it's actually quite good advice. Don't over pressurize yourself on what you think you need to do at that age. So
absolutely.
So just jump in, because like Rebecca's just reminded me of something. Like I always used to worry about like having to get things done like straight away. Like as soon as I graduated, I was like, right, like why haven't I got a job? Like I want to work for BBC, like why aren't they coming to me? And I worked like 2 bar jobs at once, along with like 6 or 7 like freelance websites. And had to do that for like sort of 18 months, had no money. My dad was like, you're just going to be poor forever. And I was like, yeah, maybe. But like, because I just kind of knew what I wanted to do. And I think that would be like my main thing. Don't worry about like time. Like if you want it enough and you keep working hard and you keep building those contacts, like no matter how long it takes you, if you're good enough and you want it enough, then the opportunities will come. So just keep plugging away.
Definitely. Thank you, Emma.
That's something that sort of I probably relate to in a sort of slightly different way. Is that I was when I started out, was so conscious that I wanted to do X amount of things by X age, and I'd set this plan out so structured, and I am nowhere near where that was. Like my life would have been down in London working in music reporting, but like it couldn't be more different to where I am now. And sort of like I'd also say don't compare yourself to other people as well, because we are all on like a crazy journey, and everyone's doing their own thing at their own time. And while someone might be going and doing it at 22 or 23, like if you're doing it at 40, like you're still doing, you know, as long as you're reaching your goals, like focus on what you want to do and how you want to get there.
Yeah, I mean, even like for me, I'd probably say the one thing I'd say is that I just need to chill, because I used to panic so much all the time when I was 16. And as well as that, it might sound really sad, I didn't actually have any faith in myself. I just kind of didn't have any like belief. I didn't know whether I actually had the guts to actually go far with the stuff that I was doing. I was just kind of going through the motions and hoping that at some point it would all fall together and the pieces would just click. And I think it's one of them, is that I'm a very big believer. I think I kind of come to this ever since like I got quite poorly a few years ago, that I've now come to the conclusion that like if you enjoy what you do, like it's not saying that you won't work a day in your life. And it's something that I want to do. Like I want to make sure that I enjoy every single second that like I've got, whether it's even just a split second of like me running to try and find a room before to try and get in this meeting, and I kept struggling. And in my head, I was like, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I'm here at Old Trafford, like working. If you can see, if my laptop doesn't work, I'll try and go over it and show you. And it's one of them, I'm running, trying to find rooms or whatever. And I'm like, Zarah, you're running around Old Trafford. There we go. That's working now. I'm like,
Wow.
You're your head off. And it's like, but I'm there panicking, going, oh no, like whatever. I'm like, well, have a bit of faith in yourself, Zarah, kid. And I think that's what everyone needs to do. Just enjoy life to the fullest.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think to summarize what everyone's been saying, the main things to take from this call is have faith in yourself, take your opportunities, make your connections, and chill. And it'll all figure itself out. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. That was the quickest hour of my life. You've all been absolutely amazing. Like we say, if anyone has any questions, I'm sure, I mean, I'm volunteering you all for this, but I'm sure if you drop the ladies a message, they'll be more than happy to help out. But again, a massive thank you from me and the Miss Kick team. It's been an amazing first webinar, and I'm so excited to see what you all get up to in the next year.